They say the chandeliers in the Pearl Ballroom were imported from Venice. Hand-blown glass catching Karachi's humidity like a net traps fish. They glittered with the kind of money that likes to pretend it's modest. From where I stood near the fake boxwood wall with the Step and Repeat logo, I could see the CEO at the dais, the CFO by the whiskey bar, and a sea of gold foil place cards on round tables that glowed like little islands. The air smelled like lemons and starch, like someone had ironed the curtains and the waiters in the same room. A violinist sawed through a pop song, doing his best to make it sound permanent. I looked down at my name tag where someone had printed in a clean sans serif Intern. The pin pricked my collarbone. It shouldn't have. I'd been with Dar and Candle Corporate Holdings for 4 years, the last 10 months as acting compliance lead. The lanyard had a tiny QR code that, if scanned, would open a company microsite with a generic bio about professional growth. Whoever made it hadn't bothered with my headshot. I recognized the template by its rounded corners and the same mint gradient we used on vendor onboarding forms. I had built that template. The violinist hit a sour note and then corrected. I thought of backspace keys, of things undone. The warmth from the chandeliers hovered 2 meters above everyone's heads. Below, the AC chased it with a dry breath, and napkins fluttered like pale moths in people's hands. The CEO, Kamal Dar, stood at a polished acrylic podium with the red light of the livestream camera blinking beside him like a heart monitor. Steady, steady. Behind him, a screen displayed a looping cut of the company's year in review. Cranes at port. Our green logo on a shipping container. A smiling woman in a hard hat. We are, the voiceover said in his own voice, building a future worthy of trust. I pulled the lanyard off and held it in my palm as if it were heavy. And in that moment, the violin slid into silence, the room clapped, and the CEO gestured toward me with an open hand, as if he were offering me a napkin or a machine part. And now, he said, please welcome the finest intern I've ever had the pleasure to introduce. He smiled the practiced smile of a man who likes deals more than people. Isha Reman. I could feel the shift electromagnetically. Heads turned. I saw the CFO, Naveed, glance at HR in a split-second comes line. Pretend surprise, prepared dismissal. My muscles remembered the weight of other rooms' bank vaults, boardrooms, the beige hallway of the Securities and Exchange Commission's Karachi regional office where I used to wait with a thermos of tea and a stack of reconciliations. A waiter brushed by with a tray. The scent of hot butter and grilled prawns lifted and vanished. A single microphone on a stand waited at the floor's edge, lit by a ring of light like a spotlight caught thinking. I walked toward it. The carpet was too soft, like cake, and my heels sank. The lanyard swung in my hand. Halfway there, I saw my reflection in a glass wall. Black suit, hair in a bun, a tiny silver cuff at my left ear. The cuff wasn't jewelry. It housed a recorder, the same model I'd used all week. It has a faithful, unshowy click when you thumb it on. A small part of me was offended by the lack of originality. Intern, if you're going to erase someone, at least be creative. If you're going to try to erase someone who controls the audit trail, don't do it in front of every vendor, every manager, and a camera streaming to the folks who know exactly which year our receivables ate the rain. Thank you, I said into the microphone. My voice came out polished, the same way it does when you've been forced to dress your sentences like they're going to meet someone's parents. Thank you for the kind welcome. The CEO nodded from the dais. I saw a white place card near the center of the front table with my name on it. Only my last name spelled like it had swallowed a letter. The card's corner was dog-eared, as if someone had twisted it and then thought better. One of the chandeliers pinged gently, the smallest glass giving up a sound like a spoon on porcelain. In the next minutes, you'll see how a name tag becomes evidence. How seating charts talk, and how a company that mistakes decorum for power gets reacquainted with receipts. The room waited with the sweetness of steamed rice. I pressed my thumb to the recorder cuff. I smiled. 3 hours earlier, I had stood in the ladies' room on the mezzanine, looking at the mirror wipe around itself like a cloud. A cousin to the main ballroom, the mezzanine had marble cold enough to make your ankles aware of their bones. The housekeeper had propped a door open with a folded towel, and from the hinge came a scent of bleach and hotel musk, the smell of public places pretending to be personal. I had the envelope in my bag, thick cream, with a watermark that revealed itself only at an angle. Inside, a certified copy of the partnership deed, a letter countersigned by a notary public, and a stamped escrow instruction with my name spelled correctly and the bank's freeze codes printed in tiny type that only a certain kind of person knows to look for: black or navy. My younger colleague Rumi had texted an hour before, sending a photo of 2 blazers hanging on her door. She had that open, switchblade optimism I recognized in the mirror sometimes, on days when I wasn't filing things that could end careers. Navy, I'd texted back. And comfortable shoes. Copy, she'd said. You're going to do it? A bubble? Then another. You're actually going to do it in public. Make sure your phone is on airplane mode at 7:45. I'd replied. I don't want them to call you. I dressed like it was a court date I'd invented. Mint blouse for the company brand, black suit for death in the family. When I pinned on the name tag at registration and saw Intern, the girl at the table said, "Oh, sorry, we ran out of the other kind." She had a smile like paper. "It'll do," I said, and took the mint ribbon she offered. On the master seating chart, I counted 11 blank cards where names should be. 3 vendors we'd cut in the last audit. To board members who'd pleaded illness, the charity chair, who had stopped replying after the CFO directed foundation funds to a community wellness project that didn't have a community. Someone had written a capital V next to my name on the final list and then crossed it out. I put the list back under the clipboard and smoothed the cloth as if the cloth would remember me kindly. Now, with the microphone in front of me, I could see that Rumi had slipped into the back near the lighting tech. She kept her eyes down. Good. To my left, the hotel security chief, Shay Keel, stood at his station beside a brass sign that said nitrogen monoxide, outside food or drink, in the tone of all policies. It's not you. It's everyone. Kamal, I said, turning my head toward the dais. Thank you for the introduction. I held up the lanyard so the camera could see Intern. This was an odd choice. A polite laugh rolled through the room, the kind you give a boss's joke to encourage him to try the next one. I didn't join it. The AC coughed once, then resumed its lash. It's been a big year, I said. A year for building a future worthy of trust. The CFO smiled into his glass. HR Syra folded her hands at her chest in a gesture that had always made me think of a book that closes too easily. I kept my eyes moving, mapping where people sat, where their attention rested when it wasn't pretending to. At the media table, a journalist from a business weekly, Amina, a woman with a quick pen scribbled in shorthand. She didn't look up at me, and I loved her for it. A waiter passed, and the scent of ginger and black pepper haloed, then fell apart. Beyond the glass, the city hunched under October heat, the air outside a hot, damp cloth. The chandelier sang a little when the guests shifted, a bright insect chime. You'll hear a lot tonight, I said. About growth. About culture. I'll be brief. I pressed the envelope's weight in my bag. It made a hush against the fabric, like a bird settling in a hedge. I'm going to start with a very small thing. I lifted the name tag again. I placed it gently on the podium and watched the intern reflect in acrylic like a word trying to drown. I joined Darren Kendall 4 years ago, from a regulatory desk where the walls were the color of old oatmeal, and the only glamour was a perfect staple. A whisper of laughter at the back, the sympathetic club of people who have made friends with fluorescent lights. Since then, I've reconciled our port invoices, traced wire confirmations, and written the compliance language you use when you need to sound like you are listening. In March, when your acting compliance lead quit over a budget argument, I took over. I've been your compliance lead for 10 months. I signed our last 2 audit letters. Naveed's smile dropped a degree. At HR, Sarah's mouth made a tiny ooh quickly kissed shut. Someone's water glass knocked a spoon. The metal notes skittered across the carpet and died near my feet. Tonight, I said, someone decided I am an intern. A breath of quiet. Even the violinist's bow hair seemed to resist friction. I let the quiet grow legs. It's not about the word, I said. It's about the data. It's about who edits the fields. I used to think I would explode in situations like this. Like a sachet of chili powder. You reach for dignity and suddenly you're shouting, and everything that's solid about your case becomes vapor. Years have taught me the opposite. I won't shout. I'll use process and receipts. Amina's pen found a faster rhythm. It sounded like rain. The cards matter, I said. Where we sit matters. Which code we log in as matters. I nodded toward the logo wall. Who gets their headshot matters because headshots are an index. Who gets the mic matters because mics are a chain of custody. I took the envelope out of my bag and the light found the watermark. The CEO's face did not change. He is an excellent poker player, or excellent at pretending he believes himself. The legal language inside that envelope is boring unless you like to find blood in marbling. Let me tell you a story, I said. A waiter nearby uncapped a bottle and the cork let go with a sigh. In June, a vendor we'd used for 2 years, Global North Sanitations, submitted an invoice with a new routing number. A little thing. The email subject line was exactly our template. Re-GNS invoice 5576/sanitation work. Order 3201. It looked right. The attachment had the correct logo, the right past due notice, the right font. 2, right? We spoke to them by phone. The voice was close to the one we knew. Close enough. The wire went out. 278,000 rupees. Then another. In the same week, a different vendor changed their address to a suite in Clifton that doesn't have suites. It has a mail drop. Also in June, the Dar and Candle Foundation announced a new community wellness project. We don't do wellness. We do shipping. In the front row, a board member ran a thumb along a place card's edge, the way a person tests a knife. The invoices were reversed 3 days later, I said. The money returned. We filed the usual report with the bank. We updated our vendor records. We cited the control failure and added a second signatory requirement for routing changes. We complied. That should have been the end of it. The ACs were leveled into a steady ghost. My collar felt dry against my skin, and a breeze from the vent brought a whiff of something like crushed mint. The chandeliers were warm enough to blur the edges of people's hair. In July, the foundation issued a grant for the wellness project to a special purpose entity, I said. This PI was created a week earlier by a law firm that also handles some of our customs appeals. The SPI had 3 directors listed in the registrar filing, one of whom is a driver who did not know he was a director. The grant funds left our foundation account and landed in the SPE's account with an incoming note that reads simply, per board minutes. Those minutes did not exist. Kamel's fingers on the podium were still. His cufflinks caught the light like 2 small moons over a black sea. HR's hand reached for a glass, then thought better. Naveed let his attention fall into the middle distance, like a man who wants to be the last to arrive at the crime scene. In August, I said, I requested read-only access to the foundation's bank logs. I was told by HR that I should trust the process. I was told the bank manager had a relationship with Kamal that predated my employment, and such requests were bad optics. Sarah, I turned slightly. I brought you a written request with a file number. You declined to log it. You said, don't make trouble with the people who don't forget. A ripple moved through the room like someone had opened a door somewhere and let night in. I made the request again. I continued. This time to the bank. I used my old regulator credentials. They confirmed receipt and froze the SPE transfers pending a compliance review. I recorded the call. I touched my ear cuff. The manager is there, remember, please. You were clear and helpful. Thank you. I felt the room resize, a subtle pushing back of chairs, a recalibration of posture. People measure you in real time when you're holding tools familiar to them. It's not fear. It's physics. I pulled the wire confirmations for the wellness project. I said, then I looked at our vendor change requests. The same 2 IP addresses submitted both. Those IPs resolved to this hotel and to our headquarters guest network. You have the guest Wi-Fi password printed on the back of tonight's program. A small laugh, nervous. Someone turned the program over to look. The program glinted. I traced the SPE's legal counsel. The partnership deed listed a clause that allows any principal to revoke a grant before settlement if the grant was approved under misrepresentation. Clause 12. 2. It also allows for a rescission and reversion to the Foundation's grant reserve and obligates the council to notify any beneficial party within 10 business days. The clause is a standard protection for grant misdirection. It's boring. It's also useful if you prefer process to shouting. The envelope in my hand felt like a tiny door. I set it on the podium. These are certified copies of the deed, the freeze notice, and the recorded notification to council, I said. Leaks happen when we assume our friends are sponges. Paper does not leak. Paper records. Paper arrives. A bell chime from the service entrance sounded. And then the room's attention hooked to one place a hotel staffer entered with a sealed overnight envelope. It had the red and white rush label of a courier who wants to be remembered. The security chief, Shaquille, received it, checked the seal, and brought it to me with the care of someone delivering a newborn the size of a book. "Thank you," I said, and signed the tablet. The stylus tip was soft, a little mush at the end of procedure. The screen timestamped my name and reflected my face in the black while it saved. "This," I said into the mic, "is council's confirmation." I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The paper made that tender sound like a sheet slipping off a bed. The Wellness Project's grant has been rescinded. The funds are frozen pending the audit. The bank will only recognize 2 signatories for any action going forward: the Foundation's independent chair and the compliance lead. I'll be notifying the Registrar of Charities after this toast. It was not a toast, but the champagne was already in glasses, and the CEO, to his credit, lifted his. The room did not follow. I could hear glasses sweating on linen, little wet rings inked on white. "Now," I said, "about the name tag." I lifted the intern again. "About that seating card with my last name misspelled." I picked it up from the table, held it between 2 fingers. "About the missing board minutes that were cited to move 6 figures. About the vendor changes on hotel Wi-Fi the day before our gala meeting with donors." The details speak to intent. It's what I look for when I go through camera angles and email subjects and courier slips. It's what any of us look for when we're deciding whether to trust. The violinist, either brave or oblivious, drew one smooth note and then went quiet when he understood the room wanted all frequencies open. I remember I said, the first time I saw Kamal's office at headquarters. The view swallowed the port. The desk was a slab of something that used to be alive, pressed and varnished to look humble. There was a drawer with a lock that stuck. He joked about losing the key. I remember thinking that locks don't keep bad people out. They keep honest people honest. In that drawer, later, we would find a stack of white envelopes with nothing on them but a single letter, V, and a number. I was giving the room a path. Rooms like paths. They like to know where not to step. V, I said, stood for vendors. The number matched a bank freeze code I would come to memorize. I let the quiet return. Seems I don't belong here. The words landed with the dull honesty of a stone. I let them. Early, not weaponized, still truth. A quick shift at the CFO's shoulder suggested he had thought of a response and then discarded it. I had met him 3 years ago in a conference room where the AC didn't reach properly. He'd tapped a pencil against the table and told me my reconciliations were too forensic. That we needed a partnership mindset with vendors and to stop thinking like a cop. I remember he used the word optics as if it meant reality. He also used my first name like it was a nickname he could pick up and put down. Before I learned to write my sentences like legal letters, I learned to sit still. The first time I was in a precinct in another life. Not as a suspect, but as a witness whose cousin had been in the wrong karai. Watched a uniformed officer write more neatly than anyone in my school. He wrote as if the line he drew could hold the day together. The day did not stay together. But I remember the certainty that the only power worth having is the kind that can be recorded and countersigned. So when the Foundation's funds moved under a missing minute, I did the only thing I believe in. I filed, served, executed, notarized, recorded. I walked the papers myself to the notary on Sharif Fazil, because his stamp's ink is always saturated. It photographs well. I called the bank manager and asked him to witness the email reply and the timestamp attachment. I sent the courier with the countersigned rescission letters and tracked the envelope on a screen that updated every 5 minutes with a new dot on a tiny map. When the law firm acknowledged receipt, I printed their email and slid it into a folder. When they didn't pick up my call, I saved the call log anyway. When HR told me to stop making trouble, I made a trouble stack that could stand on its own, pressed and varnished to look humble. At lunch that day, I met with Rumi at a little place near Empress Market, where the ceiling fans cut the heat into sections and the air smelled of cardamom and diesel. "They'll come for you if you do it," she said. "They'll smile while they do." She poured water from a sweating bottle into a scratched glass and nudged it toward me like an offering. "They already are," I said, showing her a screenshot of an email where my name had been removed from a thread. The email subject line was Wellness Project Optics Talking Points Updated Invite List. Okay. And my name was missing from 2 and CC. Low. My own text from earlier replies had been redacted in white, snipped neatly like nails. They already think I'll back down if they make me visible as a nobody. "You won't," she said, certain as a stone step. "I know you." "Tell me something good," I said. She grinned. "The charity chair called me back. She agrees the project smells wrong. She'll be here tonight." I looked at the sleepy fan, the tilt of its blades. "Then we do it tonight." Back in the ballroom, the charity chair. A tall woman named Samina, who wore a scarf in white silk and a ring, like a small planet, lifted one hand. "Excuse me," she said, not into a microphone, but the room made a path for her voice anyway. "If the funds are frozen, what's our process?" "Process," I said, "is we issue a notice to all stakeholders, which includes donors and beneficiaries. We schedule a special board meeting under the audit clause. We record minutes. We commission a third-party review. We file an addendum to our annual report and notify the registrar. We update our website with a plain language notice. We make the funds whole. My office will host the special meeting," she said. There was muscle in it. "Tomorrow morning?" "Thank you," I said. As I looked toward the back where the bank manager stood now. Having arrived discreetly during the speeches as I asked him to, if the letter landed, he gave me a nod that hit like a stamp. "We have your written confirmation." He lifted a single folded page and the light caught the bank's logo. Stamps in this room were beginning to act like punctuation. Kamal chose that moment to speak. "Aisha," he said with warmth like a good whiskey, "this is a misunderstanding. There's a time and a place to resolve misunderstandings. This is a celebration." "Agreed," I said. "Misunderstandings live where minutes are missing." I tapped the envelope. "And celebrations are safest when receipts are in the room." He tried a smile that didn't find purchase. "We could have handled this internally." "We did handle it internally," I said, 3 times. "You authorized a wellness project outside the foundation's remit. You cited board minutes that did not exist. You routed money through an SPE, newly formed by counsel who stand to benefit from billable hours. When I requested logs, you refused under optics. When I filed the rescission, you declined to receive." I escalated. Our policy uses that word, escalated. A murmur rolled, chairs creaked. The chandeliers hummed. I could smell someone's perfume, jasmine with a blade in it. He went for gentler. "It's your word against." "No," I said. "It's my recording against your claim. My courier slips against your missing minutes. My bank freeze codes against your wellness. It's my audit trail against your intern badge." The violinist, perhaps daring now, played the smallest arpeggio, 3 notes like a remembered laugh. Someone in the second row smiled into their glass. "Kamal," the CFO said softly, "let's discuss in the we're already discussing," I said. "Here where donors, vendors, and staff can witness. Here where the foundation chair, the bank manager, the journalist, the hotel security chief, and our independent auditor are present." I nodded, and the independent auditor Mir, a small man with precise hair, raised a hand. He'd been at the back pretending to be no one, the way auditors breathe. I have reviewed the SPE filings, he said quietly. They are unusual. He had switched the calculus. Good auditors do that without changing volume. The room exhaled. Glasses clicked lightly on tables, like a lock trying not to be heard. Thank you, I said. We'll need your written remark. I saw then the thing I'd been waiting for. It's small, always small. The CEO set his glass down too hard. It clinked against the podium with that flat, shamed sound. The CFO reached for his pocket and missed fingers closing an inch above the fabric. The HR director's smile came apart like thread when it meets lemon. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, I said. I'm here to record. I'm here to certify. I'm here to put the money back where the money belongs. After that, we can talk about who made a mistake and who made a record of one. Someone laughed, one sharp bark, then swallowed it. The chandeliers went quiet. Or maybe I stopped hearing them because my own blood was being very loud in my ears. Not with fear, but with precision. 2 more things, I said. First, we have camera footage from headquarters guest Wi-Fi sign-on that matches the time of the vendor change requests. Second, we have a visitor log entry signed with a name that doesn't match. ID. Your administrative assistant wrote the script line, "It's for optics in a message." She used quotation marks around optics. The assistant at the back put a hand to her mouth. It's strange how an apology can look like a defense and vice versa. Camel's face shifted 1 degree toward something he kept in a drawer. You're making enemies you can't afford, he said. Enemies are expensive, I agreed. Procedures are paid for. The hotel security chief cleared his throat. Ms. Ramen, he said, if you need the room at any point to be cleared for a private conversation, we can comply. Thank you, I said. We'll be brief. I felt the paper's edges in my fingers, the way good stock resists folding. I remembered the sound of a stamp hitting a document, that gentle thud ink, asking paper to believe it was permanent. I took a breath through my mouth and tasted hotel air, cotton, and citrus. In the next minutes, I said, you'll see counsel's letter read into the record. You'll see the bank's confirmation logged by our independent chair. You'll see a schedule for the audit and a notice to donors drafted. You'll see a rescission executed, notarized, recorded. You'll see badges collected from any staff under investigation. You'll see codes revoked. You'll see a quiet we earn. I handed the letter to Samina, the chair. She read without drama. There is a kind of power in refusing to make theater out of justice. It's the power of not needing applause. She used the phrase rescinded and returned. And somewhere between those 2 words, the room let go of a breath it had been holding since the violinist hit his first note. Ms. Remen, she said, going forward, the compliance lead will have full oversight of all foundation dispersals and bank logs. Please draft the policy update. Already drafted, I said. I reached for my bag, slid out a folder, and handed it to her. 2 copies, 1 for the record, 1 for the website. We'll post a plain language notice as well. The CFO moved as if to stand. I watched his knee. Pressure makes the knee tell the truth. He settled. Badges, I said. Please. Hotel security stepped forward with quiet shoes. They did not touch anyone. Touch is theater. They held out a little dish like it was full of almonds. And the room watched as HR unclipped her lanyard. As the CFO hesitated and then unhooked his with a twitch. As the administrative assistant, tears making shiny tracks on her cheeks. Set hers down with a sound like a small decision. Keys surrendered, codes revoked. I said gently. Pending review. You'll receive letters tonight. I looked at the journalist. Amina, I'll send you the public notice at 11. She nodded without looking up. The speed of her pen had settled. Precision finds its own breath. That was the first part of the reckoning. The night continued in procedural beats. We opened the courier pouch containing the acknowledgement from counsel that they had notified all beneficial parties. The letter used the word enjoined for any future dispersals under the Wellness Project. We recorded that word like a hymn. We countersigned the bank's freeze confirmation. We scheduled the special board meeting for 9:30 the next morning and approved remote attendance for the 2 members currently in Islamabad. We printed on the hotel's business center printer with its thin paper and overachieving toner. A notice for the glass doors at headquarters. Audit in progress. Visitor access by appointment only. At some point, someone tried to restart the gala with a song. It didn't take. Nobody wants to dance when the walls are writing things down. The smell of lemon gave way to coffee, the polite stimulant of aftermath. Waiters did what they do in any crisis, continued working. I admired them more than anyone there. After the letters were read, I gave Kamal a choice. We could walk outside and he could make a statement into my recorder, or he could remain and have his silence recorded. He chose sentences that held like wet laundry. He used passive voice. Mistakes were made. He said our culture and our values, and we will learn. It's hard to learn when you exit through a private door, but I did not say that. I do not ask mirrors to be windows. The night finished, like most nights do, with small things. The security chief drew a line through the names on a clipboard and initialed the bottom. The auditor collected his papers with a care that was almost tender. Rumi brought me a glass of water and didn't try to hand it to me until my hand was ready. To open, the chandeliers dimmed to something like mercy. In the days that followed, the shape of the room stayed stamped on my body. Keys surrendered, letters filed, badges clipped. The CFO submitted his resignation on a Sunday morning with no subject line and a 3-line email that read like it was holding its breath. HR announced she was taking a sabbatical to focus on family. Kamal he found a new title very quickly, Senior Advisor. He retained an office without windows and an assistant who was also a witness. The foundation's website carried an apology in 11-point font and a notice that our board meetings would include a public attendance hour with a set number of seats and a signing sheet with 2 signatures. One from staff, one from an independent observer. Vendors called to ask if they had to change their passwords. Yes, I said, and sent them a link to a plain language guide. A donor whose name opens doors asked me to lunch in a garden where the shade smelled of earth and the tea smelled like leaves. She asked me if the project had truly existed. No, I said, but the idea might, later, when our house is clean. Rumi took on a new title, Compliance Analyst. I watched her watch people and knew she would grow into the job if she kept her shoes flat and her sentences round. Azair called to say the bank would be publishing a note about foundation accounts. It's undergoing additional verification before Amina's story ran under the headline Receipts at a Gala, and in it she never used my name until the last paragraph. She called me the woman with the envelope, and I loved the way that emptied me into an action. 2 weeks after the gala, I found the drawer in Kamal's office still sticking, still trying to keep honest people honest. I used a paperclip because that's what the universe loves, and inside I found more white envelopes. Some contained nothing. Some contained cash counted in a hand that trusted itself. 2 contained place cards from old dinners, names misspelled in the same hand. A childish cruelty that had learned calligraphy. We documented. We recorded. We returned funds per policy. We sent polite letters with sentences like executed and recorded and certified. We certified. The notarized seals took the light like small moons. At home, the city was different in the tiny ways cities change when something large has moved inside of them. Motorbikes still screamed down the street like they had made a pact with the air. The neighbor's cat still mistook our doormat for her own. I finally bought the lamp I'd wanted for months. A brass one with a shade that threw late afternoon light like wheat. I found a new ritual. I'd come home, hang my jacket in the hall, press the recorder cuff onto its base, click and listen to the soft charge begin. The sound was stupidly satisfying. It was a sound that said, "Tomorrow we'll notice." The 3rd week, I met Rumi on the roof of a small restaurant in Old Town. A place as close to a rooftop restaurant as we get without making the building nervous. The air was cooler than it had any right to be. And the plates came off the grill in curls of steam that smelled like cumin and lemon from real lemon, not hotel lemon. She looked at me in the kind of steady way. You can only look at someone after you've watched them file something that made other people change chairs. They treated you like an intern, she said quietly, a spark under velvet. Like you belonged nowhere. I dipped bread in sauce, felt the texture of garlic on my tongue. Seems I don't belong here, I said. And we both laughed at the way a sentence can undo itself if you say it in the right weather. What I meant was, I belong where the signatures go. I belong where the copies live. I belong where a recorder makes a soft click and a bank log shows the number of a day that did not forget itself. The last envelope was not for them. I wrote it to myself on a Sunday when the city felt like a body you could trust. I put inside it a single piece of paper, the original seating chart from the Gala, with its blanks where people we needed most had not shown. I wrote on the edge, remember who sits where. Remember who moves. Remember who records. I sealed it and put it in a drawer that doesn't stick. On a Thursday, a month to the day after the Gala, we stood again in a room with a microphone. This time a community hall with walls the color of chai, the air sweet with floor polish and something like cardamom. We presented our audit. We read our policy updates. We answered questions from a woman who runs a school, a man who runs a clinic, a boy who wanted to know if the word foundation means the same thing as the bottom of a house. It does, it should. We took our time. We let the air breathe. We used words like certified and recorded and noticed the way the words lived on people's faces. Suspicion or relief. Justice, when it arrives on stationery, is not beautiful, but it is clean. On my walk home, I counted small wins, like rosary beads, a new badge that says my name and the word lead, an inbox with fewer exclamation points, a notice board at headquarters with fresh pins and straight edges, a text from my mother, who doesn't read business weeklies but reads the faces of her children. You look calm, she wrote after a clip made its way to her phone. I hope you ate. I told her about the bread on the roof and the lamp by the chair and the neighbor's cat, who now uses our doormat like a confidant. I do not believe in villains like television believes in them. I believe in habits and incentives and missing minutes. I believe in locks that stick and envelopes with watermarks and a city that smells like ginger and diesel and sometimes just as when the paper is fresh from the stamp. I believe in rooms that resize themselves and in the sound of silence that follows a sentence that lands. I believe in the 3 times a sentence needs to be said to change its job. I believe in the steady click of a cuff taking charge for tomorrow. When I drew the line on the last page of the audit and signed my name, I did not feel triumph. I felt temperature, the cool of paper on my palm, the ordinary warmth of a city night moving through an open window. I felt texture, the grain of a desk that used to be a tree, the ribbon of a lanyard now cut into 2 and tucked into a file as evidence. I felt sound, a courier scooter engine fading, the small applause of my kettle when it settles. I am not an intern. I am a woman with a recorder and a stamp and an address for where money returns when it loses its way. I am a person who knows which drawer sticks. I am someone who will always ask for the minutes. And when the minutes aren't there, I will make the room that makes them appear. If you've ever been handed a name tag that tried to shrink you, this is your reminder. Paper is louder than humiliation. If you need a nudge to file, to serve, to notarize the boundary you've been drawing in your head, consider this. Tell me where you are, and I'll help you plan the first receipt.